This is Snapshot 24W34A, and can you imagine my excitement when reading the blog post and seeing a ginormous oak tree? What is this glorious new feature that they've snuck into this snapshot, I wonder? There's no mention of it anywhere here in the changelog. Normally those screenshots hint at something that is in the snapshot, but I guess not today. However, there is something in this snapshot which is an idea that I've had for crafting for some time. I've been mentioning on my streams. I don't know if Mojang watch, but it's in this snapshot. Before we look at that and the other changes in this snapshot, we are going to look at the experimental features. These have received some changes once again. And I just want to remind you, everything you see is subject to change based on the community's feedback and the direction Mojang want to take these changes in. We also do not know what version of Minecraft they will be put into the game on. But let's start with the Redstone, where the randomness has been removed based on community feedback. In the last snapshot, we could have powered either of these randomly. Now you'll see it's always the one on the left. As it says here on the website, Redstone wire updates now have a left first preference. But of course, left is relevant. If I'm facing in a different direction, that would be a different direction, right? But oh no, look, now it's the one on the other side that's getting powered. If this is confusing, don't worry, you just have to think about the perspective of the redstone. This is the source of the power, and on its way to the piston, this is the leftmost side. From the opposite side, of course, it's the other way around. As you'll see here though, we can trip the system up. If we look at the piston that does get powered, the lever is coming from the left, but when we're facing this way, it should be true of the one on the right-hand side, and now it's not. And according to the blog post, in situations like this, where there's not enough context, it should fall back to being random, which is not what I'm seeing. But of course, this is all a work in progress, and Mojang have also addressed that these changes are massively interfering with how quasi-connectivity works, and that they plan to address these issues at a later point. So they've heard our concerns and they're looking into it. Next up, let's take a look at changes to the bundle. You'll see here that we now have 3 rows of items to preview what's inside the bundle, whereas previously it was just 2. The idea behind this change is to allow the player to better keep track of their items when it switches over to having that +5 or whatever the number is appear, so you can see more of your items still. I think Mojang explained it better. The items fill in from the top without leaving any gaps, so they changed the behavior because it meant items moved left to right in the bundle as new items were added. So it became more difficult for players to keep track of those items. So with only 2 rows in the tooltip, the behavior of pushing those rows down removed half of the visible items at a time, which they thought was too much, so they've added the 3rd row to make up for that. I think a better idea for the bundle here might be to use this scrolling from left to right to sort of infinite scroll and then bring the items further down into the same row. So that way you could kind of cycle through everything in the bundle, and then when you land on the item you want, then you can drop it out of the bundle. Anyway, we'll have to wait and see what they can do. Here's a little thing that I missed from last week though. When a bundle is full, you get this red meter pop up like so. Next up is the experimental changes to minecarts and rails. Their snapping to the rail has been made a lot smoother. The issue before is that they would snap to the very center of a rail, so if it landed between 2, it would kind of teleport forward or back. There were some other snapping issues when placing a minecart. You could see it visibly rotate. Now when you right click on a rail, it will just be sat in the correct position. And according to the website, this will allow for piston bolts and similar contraptions. Minecart stacking is back, but it can only be done through the use of a dispenser. And if you're going to do that, why not just let the player right click on the rails? And here's something I learned from the comments on the last video. If we remove this rail here, we'll have much more fun with sending minecarts off of the top of this. So let's nudge a villager into the minecart. Well, that guy doesn't want to ride. Probably a wise decision. I think this fella is starting to feel nauseous. Let's go ahead and flip the lever, and dang, that guy just got yeeted into the sky. And I noticed when the minecart is in the water, it does this tilting thing at a diagonal, which is kind of cool. Anyways, those are the minecart changes for this snapshot. I just want to take a quick moment to say if you're not subscribed to this channel, please consider it, because I'll be making snapshot videos every time there's a snapshot. So if you want to stay informed, then make sure to do that. Thanks for listening. Let's crack on with the video. So those were the experimental changes coming to a future version of Minecraft. Now let's get into the changes for 1.21.2. Starting with a change to crafting, I've done a lot of that this season on Hermitcraft, mostly making redstone components where I'm constantly shifting things into the crafting table and taking them out again. There's a lot of repetitive clicking. And I've mentioned that it'd be cool to have a button to just repeat the craft. Well, supposedly that's been added, but you got to use the recipe book. So if we put that in there and shift click this down and then press spacebar, look at that. It drags the items from the inventory into there. And now I just have to tap spacebar each time to repeat the last craft that I did. And to be extra clear here, this comes from using the recipe book, clicking on the recipe, and then pressing spacebar to bring the same recipe back up again. That is honestly excellent, and I'm so happy to see this added. There's a really cool little tweak. We are back at the well border to throw things at it. Last snapshot, we saw these things would get stuck into it like it were a wall, whereas now certain types of projectiles will simply bounce off of it, the trident being one of those. Watching them float back up to me is kind of amazing. Look at that. Okay, the other ones are arrows. They will simply bounce off of the world border now. And then the fishing bobber of a fishing rod, supposedly. This one is actually just sliding down it by the looks of it. So then eggs and snowballs, they will just break upon hitting the world border. Here on the website, it also says that items which convert into another item after consumption will no longer do so in creative. And I'm sure I've seen them make this change plenty of times with lots of different items, but in the example they say that the honey bottle will no longer do this, and I'm consuming it and I'm not getting a glass bottle. There are also reports that the frame rate has been improved when using higher render distances, and that they've significantly reduced the performance impact when turning the camera. Performance improvements are always a welcome change, but they're kind of hard for me to gauge, so hopefully you see some improvement yourself. Now, there are some technical changes that I'm going to gloss over in this snapshot. With item components, there are changes to food and the addition of 3 new types: use remainder, use cooldown, and consumable. Of course, all the documentation is on the website linked below. And when it comes to the resource pack stuff, there's absolutely tons to go over here with shaders. But of course, that is not my wheelhouse. I know not much at all about that stuff. But Hewan, who made the Vanilla Emissive Ores resource pack, reached out to me and explained what's going on. Basically, any resource pack that uses shaders will get broken because they've reduced the number of shader files and renamed a lot of them. There was, however, a change with the emissive ores stuff. Can you see how the ones that I've got in my hands work as I go into darkness? Well, this didn't work with items held by the player last time round. Now they do. However, the resource pack that I'm using from last snapshot is clearly broken in this one. But as you may have noticed, it's not for the items that I hold in my hand. Next, we have changes to the breeze and the blaze. It's actually underneath their blaze rods. You can see there's now an orange texture down there. It is, of course, much easier if I show you this screenshot of what it used to look like. You probably noticed it before because it's bold and obnoxious, but it's been corrected. And the blazes, they shoot their projectiles from their eye level. So now the breeze is going to shoot its wind charge projectile from its eye level instead of the middle of its body. Those were a couple of bug fixes I thought were worth mentioning. Once again, there were a lot of them in this snapshot, but they mostly just relate to things from the last couple of snapshots, including this issue, a rather amusing bug with the polar bear baby model. That's been patched, which leads me to share with you some things that I missed from last week's video. We saw the introduction of the different sized salmon fish, baby squids and glow squids, and of course the baby dolphins. These are actually all parity changes to bring Java up to speed with those features on Bedrock. We also saw the introduction of a new torch model, and when I was looking through the game's files, I noticed that all the repeaters and comparators have been changed, and I just didn't put 1 and 2 together. The torch model has been moved over to the repeater and comparator. When you turn these off though, they kind of look exactly the same as they did before. It's when you turn them on that they feel very different. Oh, and I guess compare mode would have that too, right? So that brings me to the end of this snapshot video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe to catch future videos, and I'll hopefully see you again next week with another snapshot. Bye bye.